And as we wait for others to simply join in, I'm just going to urge everyone to let down their guards. Can we remove our social masks? The face we show to the world. Can we put that down, that armor down, while we wait for others to join? This is a sacred space. And today we are hoping to alchemize something very deep within ourselves that requires the letting down of all the weapons that mask us from our truth. Can we also let down the mask we wear in our families? Where there is the need to be the provider, the protector, the responsible carrier, and just allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And finally, can we lay down the mask that makes us hide from our shadows? That which makes us feel I am not good. Can we own the shadow in this moment? Whether we are in touch with it or not, doesn't matter. But just the symbolic letting down of everything that keeps me from my shadow, if we can let it down. In the interest of time, I'm just going to go straight into this. Sonja, I suspect, like it was the last time, this may not be 60 minutes. This may be way longer. And for all of us who want to be here for as long as it takes for us to find our immaculate selves, you're most welcome to be here. So welcome all to this last day of the Truth and Reconciliation Week. In this session, we will journey through the portal of healing, war trauma in the Balkans, and through that, arrive at healing the war within us all. In the last week or 10 days, we've had some very, very powerful closed sessions to activate our healing and bring that energetic space to all of you today. And I was just mentioning to a few of my co-travelers a moment ago that I am coming alive with a war in me in this moment, with a glimpse of my immaculate self also, hoping that it will allow you all to also glimpse at what that immaculate self in you is like. There are many sources of trauma and wounding. There is intergenerational trauma or ancestral unresolved trauma. There is conception trauma that connects with our birthing process. In between is the prenatal trauma during pregnancy. There is postnatal trauma about how our mother or parent treated us. There is then the inner child wounding, and then the wounding through life. So right from the baggage of our ancestors to how we were conceived, whether we were a product of rape, of lack of love, of forced sex between our parents, or consensual sex between our parents, or loving lovemaking between our parents, whatever that was. And if there was any trauma there, to our mother's thoughts and our father's projections while we were in the womb, to how difficult or hard that birthing passage was, to what happened in the earlier days when we were reliant on nourishment to our parent, the first 7 years and our lives thereafter, there is a repository of trauma in our being. And today's session is primarily focused on postnatal trauma, inner child wounding, and current life experiences that we have witnessed. I would now like to invite Mila to kick off the process by remembering the Balkan trauma.
Thank you so much. So wonderful to be here. Just like the sky clearing after some rain and clouds, for me today is just an enormous amount of joy in my heart, because we've sat together 2 times already and went deep. And it was such a powerful, beautiful process. It was a deep drop, and it was something that we were able to do within hours, which is nearing, you know, a marvel, a miracle. And but there was such a beautiful, natural, chemical process where we came together, and because we chose to drop together, we dropped into a cold, cold, lonely well of historical drama. And it was a beneficial re-traumatizing, because it bonded us, it revealed all the coding, cultural coding that we carry forward, and historical memory to remember, as we decided, as Sonja reminded us and said, we need to remember, even when we kind of devised all kinds of ways to dance around or busy around or numb around that well, of dropping into that well. But underneath that well, where all these scared mothers were in the hideaway, I think this might actually trigger a deeper generational memory for each one of us. The so-called women in black that are in perpetual mourning from one historical drama to another. Every 20, 30 years, there's a drama, a war. So that women, as far as I remember, in the Balkans, not only in the arena of former Yugoslavia, the women are always in black, mourning, losing their fathers, uncles, brothers, husbands, sons, and the profound longing for love and peace, along with profound grief and loss, and the need and the pressing need to survive is in us, and the profound loneliness for the men that we lost and for each other in the busying of life, because we were the ones that had to clean up the mess after the war, pick up the babies and the elderly, and plow the land and heal the wounds and clean things and rebuild relationships and birth again, find love again, emerge from the soil time and again, to bury and to birth and to plow and to harvest and to hold hands, and somehow, somewhere, find the voice again to sing one of those songs that speak again and again about the very same cycle. So as we dare to drop into the well where we found the women in black, where we found the yearning and the rise of the grief, and we found ourselves curled in, lonely, cold children, little girls at the bottom of the well, what rumbles from underneath the bottom of the well, where we thought that is the absolute bottom, what rumbles is the rising of new desire for connecting, new desire for loving, new desire for bonding, for truth, for courage, for integrity, for all the values that we mentioned in the previous sessions. And a golden thread of the underwater current that we know will rise and somehow will pierce us through and start to speak and come up again to guide us to rise out of the well into the sunshine. To be the bridge between that golden undercurrent and the sunshine. Between realms, as that's what we were built for as women, to tread domains, to be a being on the spectrum, to be a being capable to tread different dimensions. And to yet again nurture and tend to that bridge for others. And that is the hope for today. This is why these women came to each other and to the world together, to show what's possible, to tread between the heart and the mind, the underworld and the other world, between regions, across domains and disciplines and continents, I should say. So I'm grateful to Suzy and Nilima, I'm grateful to Bharat Mata, to the Mother India, because she reminds us exactly of that. And the values that we have shared spiritually and historically. And I'm grateful for every single one of you and all the sisters today that showed up from all different domains. This striving and this desire is known to every single one of you. And in terms of the Balkans, which I've sketched the correlation between deeply personal and universal, and the process by which the deeper we drop into the personal, the more universalized we emerge, capable of that empathy, capable of bonding across cultures, capable of feeling the cosmic pain of continual rebirthing and destruction, hoping that there will be a world in which the conflict can be soothed into a contrast, that it doesn't have to be war, it can be a wrestle. Into offering and making love. In terms of the Balkans, in terms of the factual, that's something that can be found anywhere on the internet, in the historical books. I can offer a brief sketch of part of the world, almost like a very unusual navel of the world, where all the chakras meet, leading up to the heart and to rise higher. It's an intersection of East and West. It is a resourceful part of the world, a precious piece for real estate for some, a precious sourcing into the spiritual and deep historical for others, or both. It is an unusual place, a powerful geostrategic spot, a doorway from the east to the west, in some ways a great way to transport goods, and all the things that the West desires to sometimes intoxicates itself, sometimes displays the projections onto. And this is the place through which the East yearns to share itself and its gifts equally. So for transporting goods of all kinds and values of all kinds, material and immaterial, we are that doorway and we are that pathway. And the intersection of profound historical, what we might perceive as curse, perpetual repeated curse, and tremendous cultural blessing and gifting that we know of the East and West and stand in the crossroads of that pathway. And over the centuries, we are the Eastern Roman Empire that survived the Western Roman Empire for 1,000 years. We are the gift of the East to the West of the knowledge of the universities and hospitals, of forgotten knowledge that some have carried forward through, say, the knowledge of the Bogomils and the Cathars and Albigensians. And for some of you, I'm just kind of spreading, giving the breadcrumbs along the way. And then we are the arena of many empires vying for this resourceful land and resourceful people. And anywhere from 500 years of the Ottoman Empire to Austro-Hungarian Empire, to the place where the German might wanted to show its full force through bombing, all the way to the new empire of the USA, bombing former Yugoslavia and its unfinished social project in '99. So that's who we are, that's where we come from. And internally we come from the region and the peoples, the dream of pan-Slavism, the dream of uniting Slavs into something bigger, even though internally we point fingers and think that some are more sophisticated than others, leading us historically now to the moment of the breakout of the Civil War that will lead us to this process. And those that seem to be most civilized ended up choking a Macedonian soldier of 18, 19 years old in Slovenia. That's how it erupted. He was a soldier of the Yugoslav National Army. That was the sacrificial lamb where it started, where there was a full rejection of Yugoslavia, a rejection of something more that is violent and passionate and barbaric more to the south, while the north was more sophisticated. But the north showed its tremendous desire to secede, to separate through profound sacrifice of being able to choke without accountability, without atoning for it, and that it all descended to the south and all the fraternity and unity erupted into a bloody civil war. And those, for example, in Montenegro, perpetual fighters, Highlanders and perpetual fighters, took the other also reversed. They also reversed. And all of a sudden they decided not to fight that war because there was no external oppressor, but received refugees from all around. So there were profound, tremendous, mind-blowing, heart-exploding reversals that happened. But the truth is emerging now. The truth in these women, in these scholars, in these leaders, in these mothers and healers, and I should say lovers in the mystical way. That's the most important one. The lovers with the capital L, the lovers of the world, in the world, with the world, that decided to come together. And this is our historical moment. This is not a healing meeting of a retreat kind. We're not retreating. We're coming forward. We are the faces of those women. We are the ones that are coming forward to do the work, to rebuild, to regenerate, and to take forward. My profound gratitude for allowing me to share this memory and this vision.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mila. That was so beautiful. Irena, can I request you to just come in and headline for us the key traumas that we encountered, that we relived, that we worked through in our last huddle, the very deep wells that we fell into and emerged from.
Yeah, 2 days ago we met as young children, as young women, and we shared this sense of confusion, injustice, invisibility, of the need to understand what's going on around us. When the supposed mature adults around us needed to give us some signpost, some form of guideline, where to go, what to do. So all our stories had a one universal thread. It all came down to our little girls, and we were all here women, who felt totally lost in everything what was going on around us. And then we found our ways how to cope with it, and how we took this with us as we all dispersed ourselves into the rest of the world. Most of us are leaving former Yugoslavia to New Zealand or the States and England. and how in that sense of being lost and not anchored and not rooted, and the feeling of floating, how we translated this into our relation with our men, with our family, with our children, and how we learned in the process that all this needs of the inner child to be parented and loved and mothered by others, this is what we need to give to ourselves. How we need to embrace our man and our woman within us, our mother and father, and how only our mature adult woman can do the healing work in the circles such as this. And we were taken into this, as Mila described, into the dark shadows, into deep well, so deep, so deep. We all cried with very great mastery of Suzy, who gave us a spot on reading of our essence and our need and what we do currently we do in our lives in order to heal this wound. And how do we translate now into our important service to the world and to the mother. And how this trauma, by the childhood trauma, the trauma of the war, which was connected, how it has taken us into this current place in the world, with the world, and with ourselves. And how we need to bring this to our power, to our life force, to our Shakti, to be in the world, strong and tall and bold, and not to run away and to escape into all forms of escapism and coping strategies that hide us because it's too painful, it's too still raw. And how we need to face it, embrace it, take our inner child into our arms and say everything is okay. And how we, most of us here, although we have a few younger women as well, how we are now opening this path for the new role models, how to walk and lead into the new world that is getting born. And we have a very important role to play, yet not to take the whole world onto our shoulders, not to become activists who are going to burn ourselves. We need to do this with the grace. With the help of the divine grace. Then our leadership and action become effortless. And we need to trust. And we need to surrender. And yet at the same time acknowledge our human limitation. And not to allow our ego to take us into this illusion that we can do it. We are greater than God. So with sincerity and humility, with courage and perseverance, we step into that inner space and the space of the world.
Thank you so much, Irena, for so gently navigating us to that inner space, to that war within that I shall now be speaking of. Whenever we witness or experience any unloving, fearful, or unkind event, it alters the immaculate child in us, splintering our psyche and changing how we view the world and ourselves. Such an event is deeply tragic, for it robs us of our purity and ability to feel safe in the world. It divides and contracts us, and instantly, the haven of our inner and outer world is transformed into a dangerous place, wrought with fear, judgments, blame, inadequacies, unworthiness, traumatic emotions, loss, and suffering. This is a great tragedy, because while the war outside eventually passes, we get stuck in the war within us, escaping it, numbing it, as Irena mentioned, battling with it, and denying it until we are simply exhausted by it, or we just grow old and die. To heal, we must contemplate with curious compassion the question, who was I before I got wounded? We are the trinity of the adult child, the wounded inner child, and our immaculate self. The person who is listening to me now is the adult child. This part of us has been busy for many years, escaping and numbing the pain, either through striving and accomplishing, projecting and blaming, or self-harming and self-shaming. The wounded inner child is usually in hiding, but it controls the adult in us, hence the term adult child. And beneath these two, at our very core, lies our true immaculate self, our being before trauma altered our perception of ourselves, others, and the world. To heal, it is important to remember who we were before the trauma. I use the word trauma in the psychological sense, when our psyche was shattered. What were we like when we were still in touch with and driven by the spiritual instinct of love, before trauma flipped that switch to our survival instinct, and we were never the same again? Until we reconcile this truth, we can never truly reclaim our immaculate self. This work requires great tenacity and courage, not only because we don't have a map that can lead us to our truth and reconciliation, but also because we are driving in the dark and the path is invisible. It's easy to battle the enemy, but very, very hard to wage the war with loved ones who have hurt us. To reclaim our wholeness, therefore, we first need to reimagine or re-envision what our immaculate self was like. Who were we before the primary trauma? I invite you all to close your eyes and turn your attention completely inwards as we embark on this amazing journey of reimagining. Seek to be shown your immaculate state. Who was I before I was wounded? Was I friendly, pure, curious, naturally peaceful, exuberating joy? See yourself as all of those things. And now think of the most painful event in your history. Journey backwards in time to before that tragedy happened. Who were you before that event? Were you spontaneous, whole, integral, fearless, at peace with all existence? Imagine yourself being that way. What parts of your loving essence did you lose in the wounding? Did you lose your faith, your ability to trust, your compassion, your courage, your authenticity, your belonging, and your ability to be vulnerable? What was it you lost? Recognize it and know what it is you must reclaim. What soul qualities and virtues recoiled and went dormant after that wounding? Did you lose touch with your humility, your ability to discern accurately? Did you lose your clarity? What soul qualities and virtues faded away? Aspire to retrieve these. In what ways did your being contract? Did you end up disconnecting with your expansiveness, your innocence, purity, your love of self, your appreciation of beauty? Pray to have these back in you. What happened back then lies in the past, but your body and psyche is still imprisoned there as a victim, as a prisoner of war. The trauma changed you. If you don't reverse its effects on you, how can you return to your true, immaculate state? Do you wish to remain trapped as a victim of war in continuous suffering and being in pain? Or do you want to activate your power to choose and set yourself free by engaging your higher will? Are you ready to reclaim yourself by owning the responsibility for it? Can you see this more clearly now? This is your task, your journey, your choice, your war within. Since after trauma, you have been driven by fear, feeling separated and torn from the womb of peace. It's the survival instinct that makes you feel isolated. Are you choosing aloneness or oneness. Examine the possibility that sometimes pain is the bitter medicine. It sets the context for healing unconscious errors and wounds in our consciousness. It sets the springboard for our purpose in this life. But if we allow fear to rule us, we get stuck in it. Examine closely what happened to you after the trauma. Did it make you antagonistic, afraid, hateful, vengeful, oppressed? Can you choose to dissolve these now? In what ways did the trauma alter your peace-loving self? Did it fracture your connections, cause separation, make you feel excluded, ostracized, rejected, judged, victimized? Ask to be made whole again. Has losing your loving parts made you suspicious, untrusting, hypervigilant, cynical, myopic, fearful, violent, and unsafe? Pray to return to your immaculate state. In order to feel safe and escape your suffering, how do you cope? Have you become avoidant, repressive, shut down, conflicted, self-doubting, or apathetic? Do you hide your pain beneath anger or pride? Do you feel guilty, shameful, sad, or powerless? Recognize and own these ways of coping with your pain. Does your wounded inner child yearn to return to its immaculate state? What holds you back? What makes you feel powerless? Are you using anger or pride to feel powerful? Inner child? In the here and now, you have an important decision to make. Victim or true power? How do you want to live the rest of your days? By returning to your immaculate state or staying stuck as a prisoner of a past war? The key to unlocking your prison lies in the victim's antipodal power of forgiving and blessing. If you choose this power, something mystical begins to unfold in the soul. I cannot explain why and how that happens, but I know it does, for I have experienced it. When you forgive and bless those who hurt you, you forgive yourself for all the errors you have ever made and are able to reclaim your goodness and sense of worthiness. You feel worthy once again. When you forgive and bless those who hurt your community, the community begins to evolve spirit. When you forgive and bless those who hurt your country, the people of your country become more unified and peaceful spontaneously. And when you forgive and bless those who hurt the planet, those perpetrators become more awakened and conscious. That is true magic. Can you see how fighting this war on the outside can never return you to your peaceful, immaculate state? Because the damage is internal. The trauma shifted your psyche. Are you ready to flip the terrified inner child's survival switch back to the immaculate child's intuitive switch of the love current? Are you willing to be a soldier of wholeness, peace, and love? Can you see that this power of choice resides in you? Are you willing to fight the good war? The war, as I have experienced it, needs to be fought from two standpoints. One, from a wounded inner child, and two, from the immaculate forgotten self. The first requires us to overcome our negative nature. This is accompanied by our destructive emotions. As humans, we are naturally hostile, projecting and blaming, restless and violent. We seek redemption through revenge. We are outward directed and chaotic. To start with, we will have to battle these and vanquish these first. This is our primary task. The second vantage point lies within our immaculate self. We don't know this place because it resides in the unknown realm of our consciousness, but we can awaken it through the activation of soul virtues by engaging the higher will and practicing forgiveness and blessings to all, including ourselves, our perpetrators, and the destructive world at large. Only by engaging our higher will and aspiring to reclaim our immaculate state can we win this war. But how, you might ask? And I say, through courage and repeated practice. When anger and violence erupts in us, let us attend to the terrified inner child and choose silence instead. Then we need to remember and forgive. We need to learn how to drop all judgment and once again choose to forgive and bless. Remember, it's all in the practice. Through practice, we are attempting to reverse. I believe my connection is weak. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you sometimes badly, but it is hearable.
Okay. I am not surprised. Whenever I have engaged in some very difficult battles, which are transplanetary, transdimensional, I find something happens to the connection so we can't hear and communicate. So I am simply hoping and calling upon all of the power of love on this planet and elsewhere to keep this communication powerful so that we can all hear each other with full strength. And so coming back to the practice, through practice, we attempt to reverse the instinctive switch of fear to the intuitive one of love. This takes hard work, for we are learning to undo years of hardwired habitual behavior. Remember also that a wound lies buried beneath a negative nature, and it radiates outward in ever-increasing circles of influence. We are all energy transformers. What we suppress, we radiate and broadcast to the planet. Our repressed violence, anger, hatred, and vengefulness creates more terror on the planet. Our inner peace leads to planetary peace. Ask yourself, am I born or love, violence or peace? What am I broadcasting when I get angry? Do I wish to be a love and peace transformer? If so, can I choose to return to the truth of my immaculate self? In choosing, we are required to own the responsibility of peace. And this is a 9-step process. The first is to remember the wounding experience. And we need to do that through the heart, not through the head. This is a very important point. The trauma outlet from where we pour out all the poison is in the heart. The trauma inlet is in the head. So if we work from this space, we are going to re-traumatize and we are going to increase the trauma in us. But if we work from this place where the outlet is, we can pour it out and we can empty ourselves. The second is to relive that trauma with the sole intention of releasing the trapped emotional charge. Third step is to retell the sad story one last time as we stand outside the trauma prison and witness the event happening. The fourth step is to reframe the story with a deeper understanding of how it served my life's purpose in making me who I am today. The fifth step is to move back and step away from that biographical event and observing, contemplating that we need to reclaim some parts that we lost in that event. Then we must call them back from that event and let them be integrated into the right space in us. This is the reason I took you through those contemplations before. And I would urge you that those of you who seriously want to work with this will have to re-listen to this recording and point out, make notes for themselves. What have they lost? What soul qualities do they need to bring back? What needs to be reactivated? The sixth step is the need to restore the connection with our soul qualities that went dormant through the tragedy, as we continue to water them daily with forgiveness, blessings, and service towards others or the earth. As in Irena's case, these will blossom once again. Seventh step is to reconcile the past by going to the metaphoric top of the mountain and viewing this event's relevance in our entire life. Then we shall begin to see the gifts that the wounding has brought us. The eighth step is to consciously broadcast and radiate peace, love, forgiveness, and blessings to all so that we can stay anchored and connected to our truth, because we have to learn to own our immaculate self. And the 9th step is to respect the wounding process and not to resent it. For we can clearly see now that only in being unsafe have we learned to value safety. Only in being wounded do we aspire and strive for wholeness again. This journey of the last 10 days called me to developing a map of wholeness. And that is my gift to you all today. Can I request Sonja to please share the map with us all? I've tried to summarize everything that I've shared with you until now in this to show you what the war inside looks like. The war within must be waged against a splintered 80 that is after trauma psyche, for it is in that we end up attuning and in training to fear and violence. It's what keeps us stuck in loneliness. It's what drops us into the well of pain and suffering, keeps us tied to our lower will, our negative nature, and causes destruction. Makes us reactive. And as you can see, all we radiate to the community, to the country, and to the planet is our reaction, our fear. And therefore, everything that is happening on the planet today, we are personally responsible for in one way or another. We have contributed to it. And if we look at what can happen and what becomes possible if we reclaim our before trauma self, our immaculate self, which is peaceful, whole, trusting, humble, innocent, and powerful. Through healing, by engaging the higher will, by forgiving and blessing, we attune to oneness. And that's what we radiate to the world outside. Without doing anything on the outside, we use the true power inside to transform not just ourselves, but to transform our entire planet. And with that prayer in my heart, I hold this intention. May all beings return to their immaculate state. Thank you. I now call upon Milisava to share a few words about how we can respect the wounding process.
Well, Suzy, thank you. You know, it's very difficult for me to talk in this moment because I feel words are my mask and stories, and sometimes it's easier to talk, but now, well, I'll try to say it in short as I can. Well, from my experience, it was really important to turn to that shadow. And, you know, in this time, we hear a lot about connecting with love and, you know, speaking nice words and all this. And although I don't say it's not sincere, but many times it's just bypassing something that we cannot see, or we don't want to see, or we don't know how to access. And then people talk about shadow work, but what is shadow? It's unconscious. How can we access something that is unconscious? How can we access something that we spent years and decades escaping from? And then, well, for that we need a safe space and safe community, and most of the times we need some guidance at the beginning, at least to direct us, like where is that land, what is that terrain where we have to go, and where all these buried emotions and experiences are hidden within us. So that is a long process to see where the wounds are, to gently approach them, to slowly open what wants to be open and not forcing anything. Not to interpret or too early, just allow feelings first to happen, not to jump quickly to visions and memories that have form, because many times the feelings really don't give us the something that, you know, or if we jump to these visions and dreams and all this, it can be a way to escape again. And many times it's just very, very raw, physical, or sometimes it's just dull feeling or no feeling at all. And then it requires a lot of patience and waiting and just being there for as long as it takes, and being there for others. So the best thing is when we are supported by the people who are doing the same thing or trying the same thing, and then assist in the processes of other people. And then this helps opening up our things and our content. And then slowly we can, this content of the shadow opens to us. And there, as you explained really systematically and well, there are traumas or experiences that we could not digest from our life, but that we could not remember, like from a very early childhood or prenatal time, and there are wounds and experiences that then were translated into family patterns of behavior that are not personally ours, but that were created before we were born, like in the lives of our parents or before them in our ancestors. And there are also collective experiences that we participate in just by the fact that we are born in a certain place and surrounded by people who carry certain types of collective traumas. And then, yes, that all takes time, and maybe, or at least from my experience, the best way is to just be patient and curious, and no matter how hurtful it can be at some times, to still keep or go back to that really childlike curiosity and openness, without judging it good or bad, but just seeing it with all the willingness to embrace. And yeah, when we take all these experiences into account, ours and those that happened before we were born, and we spend some time, like a couple of months or years, really doing this work regularly, we come to the point that really sometimes our feeling that we are special is a compensation for something that we don't want to see, or something that is hurtful. But then it really connects us with humanity, like what it means to be human. And we don't feel special in that way, like this way, like in school special, like in media, how people are, you know, represented as special, like what it means to have something that other people don't have. That separates us. But these experiences of seeing what people lived, what we lived, what our closed ones lived, what our community lived, what humanity lived, good and bad, with all the ingenious ways to survive, and the developed skills and talents and all this on the one side, and on the other side, extreme suffering and humiliation and loss and desperation. So when we see this, and when we know that behind us in the lives of our ancestors, there was all of that. Like, I like one fact that in 20 generations, which is around 500 to 600 years, behind each of us stand 1 million people of our ancestors. So in previous 500 to 600 years, there were 1 million people whose genes united so that we were finally born. And in 1 million people, like, you can imagine how many different experiences. There were victims and there were perpetrators. There were loved children and abandoned children. There was prosperity and abundance, and there was hunger and lack of all kinds. There was security and insecurity and connectedness and disconnectedness with the land, and then movements. And 1 million people lived a lot. And if we then see other people with the same lens, then how can we be different from anybody? And that's the point, at least for me, where this process became very sweet. So it's not like, oh my God, there was incest. No, it's like, oh, let's see, we all are together in this, or where there is no more shame or guilt or fear that prevents us from just looking at what it means to live life now, or 500 years or 1,000 years ago. More or less, the basic things were similar in human experience. And yeah, that's when it's not scary anymore to see the wounds or to embrace them. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful, Milisava. I love the way you said that, because we are a cocktail of such complex genes from our ancestors. The only way we can view it with ease is through simplicity and through a unified lens. And that is just so beautiful. Thank you so much for lending that perspective.
Thank you, Suzy. Thank you all,
yes.
really, because I felt really at ease and free to share this.
Beautiful. And now we'd like to take any questions from anyone about this whole complex process of returning to truth, returning to our immaculate self, diving into the deep wells, journeying in fighting the internal war bravely. If anyone has any questions, you can just put them in the chat box or unmute yourselves.
I don't have a question, but I would like to comment.
Sure.
Just listening to the three of you, Mila, then Suzy, and then Milisava, just felt like such a beautiful triangulation on a journey we went on as listeners. And it just kind of brought us home. And without, Mila opened the entire context of what happened in the Balkans. Suzy took us into beyond the Balkans and what's the universal journey of the human trauma and a framework for coming back to wholeness and that immaculate self. And then Milisava just normalized it all, by reminding us of the 500-600 years and 1 million ancestors and saying everyone's had to experience everything. And here we are, and it's okay. And so just listening to the three of you and the way this conversation flowed has just been very healing. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Nilima. We have a question here which says, I am curious about engaging the men. How will the men heal? And I think that's such a beautiful question. Is there any particular person you'd like to, any of us you'd like to address that question to, or would you like us, any one of us to come forward? I guess it's addressed to any one of us.
Yeah, I would like to make a contribution regarding to the question. That's also a question that is in my mind for a long time. But I came to a point and realization that when we heal the wounds, like when the wounded people get healed, automatically, I think currently we are seeing in this patriarchal system, wounded feminine. So my feeling is when we don't have any more victims, like when the victimhood on an energetic level is healed, when the feminine energy is healed, there won't be any more narcissistic people. Like there won't be any more predators, because predators exist in the presence of victimhood. So I was quite angry in the beginning when I was doing energy work. Why do I have to do the work? Is it only me? Like I'm victimized and I'm doing the work. Why don't the other people? But then I came to a realization, they exist because I exist as a victim. So I found this kind of an answer when I tapped into my deep self, and I just decided to focus on the only person that I can change, who is me. So I just wanted to make a contribution from my perspective.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to add something on this. First, regarding men healings and men woundings. Healing and woundings don't have a gender. The same process goes to both. And it was interesting because we called for persons, not for women, to step forward and to start healing the wounds. But only women came. And I think this is because we are mothers. And we are here to create the space so that healing can begin. And men will come, I'm sure, because we are broadcasting now love, we are broadcasting peace, forgiveness, and blessings, as you said, Suzy. And regarding this triangle, persecutor, victim, and rescuer, it is a time that we transform it to another triangle, to triangle built from love, from trust, and from collaboration. Because, as you said, Elif, there's no need to have victims anymore. we are creators here. And if we know that we are carrying gifts to each other, and when we start to collaborate with trust and love, the world will spin in a different direction. Thank you.
Suzy, I would
That
like
was
to
so
add
beautiful,
something, if
Sonja.
that's okay.
Please.
See, it's fascinating that I'm getting women in black behind me. I call them. I'm so honored by this question, and I'm so because that's what calls more of me to show up in the question, through the question, while you're mourning and healing your own wounds, what it is like to look at the perpetrators or the ones who were set in motion by a perpetrating system. So I really, really appreciate what Sonja was saying in the spirit of looking at our shadows, at our polarities, at our opposite gender, whatever we mean by that, to engender then something that is integral and a higher synthesis of going forward. For men, and listening especially to Elif and Sonja, and grateful to the question. I think it was Afke who actually asked the question. I want to honor her. I would like to, in the spirit of what Sonja said, realization that we carry gifts to each other in a complementarity kind of way. I would like to do that because I think I want to be able to do this for myself personally and also on behalf of the collective. I'm going to address the masculine and the men with that same yearning for meeting you and re-engaging you again that I started with at the beginning, how much we've longed for you, how much we've grieved for you, how much today I see your pain and violations of your body, of your heart, of your mind, of your soul, of your visions, of your needs, of your aspirations. And to start by the process, not prescribing in return what you should do, but basically recognizing and acknowledging that we start from recognizing your pain and how the Saturn of the system eats its own children, and how you have been used as war bodies, as production bodies, right? As providers, even as perpetrators and things like that. It's just a snippet of what I can offer as a gift and in the acknowledgement of your pain, of your losses, of your longing for home, of your longing to return to yourself, to the feminine, to your women's circles and supports for initiation through the womanhood and for integration internally. I want to recognize your yearning and your desire to return, but also evolve, and to recognize the fact that you've been asking more and more of yourself, of us and the world. What does it look like to be a good man? What is it like to be a good man? How can I be a good man? In order for all of us to ask, what is it like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it act like? What does it be like to be a better human? What does the new humanity look like?
Mila, that was so beautiful. And I just had this image of men coming home from war, torn, battered, being forced to engage in violence, not because they wanted to, but because they were told to. And then wanting to come home to the warmth of a woman's body curling up against her, simply to reclaim their own softness, their gentleness, to be reminded of a mother's bosom, to be reminded of the womb of safety. And thank you so much for just honoring that fear in men. Quite honestly, I don't really comprehend this question because in my mind, I have always been so gender neutral. I believe the genders exist within each one of us. And our whole struggle is to balance our inner feminine and inner masculine itself. And whichever one, we are all born with a very dominant one gender aspect within ourselves. And our task in this lifetime is whatever is dominant in us, we need to pay attention to whatever is not so dominant. And in simply doing that, we will bring forth the love to all genders, regardless of what gender we have embodied in this lifetime. I also believe at a soul level, if I have come into a woman's body, then I have chosen to honor my feminine aspect. If I have come into a masculine body, I have chosen to refine my masculine aspects in some way, to correct some imbalance in some way. And for me, therefore, as in one of our previous sessions I mentioned with Irena, it is the coming together of these two which completes us. That is what creates love within us. That's what creates love children on the outside. That's what creates love between the genders. The unification, the balancing must start from within me. And so that becomes very, very important. There is also, I see on the chat box, another question about someone, Michelle, I think, posed this very interesting question that she wants to trust, and yet when she lets her boundaries down, she feels hurt. And my invitation to Michelle is, Michelle, turn inwards and examine if you trust yourself. Because the macrocosm or the law of attraction is going to bring into your life a lived experience of what is hidden inside of you. If you do not trust yourself, you will encounter people who cannot give you their trust. And if you simply alter what's on the inside, and if you learn to trust yourself more deeply, if you can penetrate that wounded inner child and go beyond to your immaculate self, if you can heal that experience, that tragic experience when a lost part of you was the ability to trust yourself, then you will be able to reclaim your ability to trust yourself, and you will suddenly find people will enter your life who will give you their trust. And you will not have to keep your boundaries impenetrable, tall, high, and you will not need to reject love. You have to learn to receive love, but before you do that, you have to learn to love your own self. I hope that answers your question. If there are any other questions, we'd be happy to take them now.
That does answer my question. This is Michelle.
Yes,
And
Michelle.
I'm very grateful. It felt like you were speaking to my soul and just specifically all the wounds that I have. So thank you for that answer.
I'm so grateful that you received the answer with an open heart. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Sonja, can I request you to come here and conclude this absolutely phenomenal journey that we've been on? It seems like I have known each one of you across lifetimes now. And I don't want to say goodbye. I don't want this meeting to end, but maybe this is just the beginning of a new world. So please take us, walk us into the new world now.
Thank you, Suzy. First, I would really like to say a sincere thank you to you, because you hold the space for all of us, in each of us, to step forward, to share what the wounds are. And it was your magic touch, I can say, that helped those wounds disappear. And it was really invigorating and an invitation for all of us to clean also other wounds and to remember what is wholeness and what is joy and what is love and what it means to be a true you. So thank you, and thank you also for today's gift, a map that we will be able to travel from fear to love. And I'm really grateful to each of you, Milisava, Mila, Singh, who's not with us today, Irena, Tina, Mila. What beautiful women we are, all of us. What a beautiful stories, and how much courage, how much love, how much perseverance is built in here. And the voice we gave, I know it was the voice for us, but it was also the voice for our neighbors, for our families, for our co-citizens, for our fellows on the planet. So thank you, because now we are all even more able to transmit what we really want to transmit, to transmit love, peace, blessings, and are able to forgive ourselves, because this is the first step. So grateful, and with this, yes, the doors to a new world are opened, because each of us has opened it for herself, and not just for herself, for all of us. Thank you.
And the doors are opened to himself. And man and woman walk hand in hand into the new world with the children who will come, the children of tomorrow, as I see them, tabula rasa, free of the baggage of their ancestors, because we have chosen to drop that baggage so that tomorrow's children can come into their immaculate self and live their lives as golden beings on this planet. And towards that intention, which I live for, which I breathe for, which is my purpose, I celebrate each one of you today who engaged in this very daring work. And I celebrate each one of you who are on this call today for creating the time and space in your really busy lives to participate and become the portals of healing to everyone that you encounter in your lives. And I dedicate this to anyone who will view this recording. May they all be able to walk into the new world alongside us. Thank you so much. This has been so joyful.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I think we can all unmute ourselves and say goodbye in each language we speak from the heart.
Hvala.
Hvala,
Doviđenja.
na svidenje.
Γεια σας, κορίτσια. Φιλιά πολλά.
Till next time.
Shukriya.
Namaste.
Bye.
Bye.
Dhanyavad.